Go ahead and thank you all for joining us today in our Doing Business series. This is Doing Business with the Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland. Our Doing Business with Corporates is the opportunity for our WBEs to hear from our corporate members on their commitment to supplier diversity, their commitment to working with women, women-owned businesses, why they do it, what offerings they may have, how you can get connected to them. It's really a really great opportunity to kind of sit at the feet of our corporate partners. So this is actually our last one of 2024. We will be doing these again in 2025. So if this is the first one you've joined, or if you've attended several others, definitely watch WBEs ORB's website, where you will be in the next, I would say, month or so, you'll begin to see our programming for 2025. And then you will be able to find out the other corporates that we'll be doing business with. So let me, hold on, let me let a couple more people in and go ahead and share my screen as well. And we will go ahead and get started. So my name is Dr. Kitiana Lowe. I go by Dr. K, and I am the Director of Administration here at WBEs ORV. And just to introduce you to the rest of our team, we've got our fearless leader, our President and CEO, Lenny Smith. Our COO, Chief Operating Officer, is Frederica Singletary. And then we have our fractional CFO, which is Jackie Jordan, as well as our fractional CMO, Stephen Easley. And then our certification team is led by our Director of Certification and Outreach, Colleen Rudisil, and our Manager of Certification, which is Robbie Moore. And then we round things out with our Corporate Relations Consultant, Byron Stallworth. So we are a mighty team of 8, actually 9 if you include our admin that we have that we need to get added to the slide, and we work diligently to make sure we can put together great program and opportunities for our WBEs. And next, I would like to go ahead and introduce you to Laura Kaplinger, who is the Strategic Sourcing Specialist of Procurement Services at the Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland, and she is going to be walking you through our presentation today.
Thank you, Dr. K. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for having us here. Obviously, we are all freezing. So if you, I will say this, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. I will try to keep monitoring that as we go through this. But if you're anything like me and I forget things, if I don't write it down or I put it right away, feel free to stop me, pause me, ask questions as we go. There will be a section at the end for questions, so you can ask them there or during the presentation. All right, so I am a part of a department called Financial Management, and underneath that is a subset, basically procurement services. So in partnership with the ODEIO, which is Office of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Opportunity, we support the bank's mission, and part of that is fostering an inclusive relationship or environment within the bank, but also outside of the bank. Part of the Dodd-Frank Act, which is the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act, so we just call it the Dodd-Frank Act, we are required to report and support an OMWI program. So basically, OMWI is Office of Minority and Women Inclusion. And how we do that is by supporting and maintaining a diverse, equitable, and inclusive culture for all as part of the workforce, supplier diversity, working with and helping diverse suppliers, increasing opportunities for minority and women-owned businesses, enterprises to participate in the procurement of goods and services. In the financial literacy space, there's education and outreach. Trainings and education are prioritized to support employees in gaining a deeper sense of belonging and engagement. Financial outreach, financial education and outreach, we partner with that. We have Latino outreach, and those are a few focused groups that we've been a part of. We also nurture supplier diversity and business inclusion. So to maximize overall level of participation in the pursuit of purchasing goods and services, certified minority business and women-owned businesses, and we're starting to branch out into veteran-owned businesses and hopefully a couple more down the road. So how does the bank track supplier diversity? So the Office of Minority, Women and Inclusion, we report that to Congress. So basically, we're required to report our progress to Congress, stating what we've been working on and in those three categories that we listed, and then our continual progress. It's an ongoing thing. It's not one and done. So some of the bank highlights are we are close to, as of right now, actually the end of October, we're coming in at $8.7 million reportable spend with MBEs and WBEs. So when we kind of cut and slice that, it's with general construction. So we do a lot of construction within the bank, staff augmentation, and then services such as housekeeping, consulting, and food. And one of the things that we really have worked hard to do is enhance our supplier diversity marketing program, but then also we drive a supplier diversity mentoring program. We actually just finished our cohort for supplier diversity mentoring, and we have companies apply to be a part of that program. They are accepted, and we establish their needs, figure out what they need help with, what do they need mentoring on. It could be anything from HR, it could be accounting, it could be legal, it could be a wide variety of things. We partner them with a specific person in the bank, and then it could be anywhere from 3 months to 6 months, building that relationship, working with that bank employee to really get a beneficial relationship going, and being able to help that small business, or in a variety of different fashions. So in saying that, if you are interested in being a part of that, please feel free to email me. We'll get contact information. We'll get you some information on how to register with the bank. All right, so what is procurement services at the bank? So we manage all the acquisitions of goods and services within the 4th district. And it is not something that is unique to the 4th district. All the districts are governed by this. So we use a federal acquisition model acquisition guidelines. We call it the MAG. So those are our guidelines that we have to abide by to purchase things, whether it be a good or a service. And then there's different levels of requirements depending on the sensitivity of the good or service. We also are governed by the Federal Reserve Accounting Manual, which is also called FRAM. So we work with our internal business areas and other stakeholders. And then if you become a vendor with the bank, there is a life cycle. So the moment we sign a contract with you to the end of your term of your contract, that is an ongoing process. It takes involvement from you as a vendor, but that is what we call the vendor management life cycle. And depending on the product or service that you are providing for the bank, there's a very big importance that you need to be part of that active vendor management piece, so life cycle. Also sourcing category management. As part of our business internal strategies, we have to understand the specific products and services that are important to our needs, but also we have to understand the risks that we take with purchasing those goods or services. We need to align with our strategies, do the research, and then select the best good or service that is going to be best for the bank. And you can see in the bottom, it says the bank does not follow or purchase through the U.S. Government General Services Administration, GSA agency. Basically, we are quasi-government. We are not the government, so we are quasi-government, which is what that means. Okay, so how can you become a successful supplier to the bank? So these are 4 different categories. So everything will be based off of need, connection, opportunity, or knowledge. So if there's a specific need or a service or product or service, that will determine how we are, whatever that need is. Does this align to the bank's mission strategy? Is there a program or project that we are working on that creates this need? Or what do we need to keep business going as usual? And then also, do we have the budget to do this? The connection would be network and supplier registration, contact information, who do we need to contact within the bank? Who do we need to contact at the vendor level that you provide? and then capability statement. So there's a lot of people that ask what a capability statement is in terms of the bank. This is something that you provide as a company to say, hey, this is all the things that we can provide to the bank. These are all the services, goods, whatever it may be that we as a business can provide. So that gives us a good idea of the breadth of what service or good that you provide or how we can partner with you as a vendor. And then if you are a certified diverse supplier, you can be a diverse supplier, but I think you need that certification to be a technical certified diverse supplier. Then there's also the opportunity. So do we follow the bank acquisition policy? So when we are going out to an RFP, so request for proposal, if we are needing a good or service, we will go out, get 3 bids, get vendors who can supply that good or service. So that would be part of the RX event. So whether it be an RFQ, which is a request for quote, an RFP, which is a request for proposal, or just I'm forgetting the other one. But either way, those are the 2 opportunities that we could engage with you to do business with the bank. So those are an invite only. That's not something that, we put out on the street necessarily. It's just if we know that you can provide that service, we may engage with you and start that conversation of having you bid or be an active participant within that RFP or RFQ. And then also the last one is knowledge. So we have a lot of processes in place, Ariba supplier setup, bank operations, and that is the last piece of the 4. I do see one question. Does each FRB require separate registrations or is it shared? I don't think that it is shared, so I think that they do have a separate registration. Am I correct in that, Sheila?
That's correct. We are working on trying to make that a simpler process. We are just recently all on the same ERP system, which is Ariba. So we all have that access to that information. But as far as like a central database of diverse suppliers, we do not have that. But it is something that we're working on. I will say that there is a supplier diversity group that does meet monthly to talk about diverse suppliers that we're using or opportunities that are coming up. So it is something that is discussed amongst the Federal Reserve System, but it is an opportunity that's been identified and it is in the works of having one database. I just wanted to also add to some of the things that Laura was saying is that that the events like today are really important for us because as she was saying, we're not and I put it in the chat, we are not the government. So we don't have like public bidding or anything like that. So it's important for us to really cultivate relationships with suppliers that do meet an upcoming need that we have at the bank so that we can understand what your capabilities are, have an opportunity to even introduce you to some of the stakeholders that we work with, whether it's HR or facilities or finance, whatever that might be, to really better understand what you're able to provide the bank so that we can invite you to those RFP events when they happen. And that's why, again, we want to be introduced to as many suppliers in the marketplace as possible, which again is why we're here today, is to meet all of you, understand what your companies do, and ultimately to invite you to an upcoming event here at the bank. And I had one more thought and then I just lost it, but I'll think about it. But we will send a link of how to register, but and we want it to be a warm kind of response where it does go to a person and not into a black hole. So we'll send you information on how to register. Our email address is also on this deck as well, but we want to make sure that we connect after this.
Thank you, Sheila. All right. So what's important about becoming a bank supplier? So your ability to comply with the bank policies and procedures, such as contractual obligations, human resources, which is what we call people and culture. If you hear that term thrown around, it's the same information security and technology, physical security, business-specific needs, supplier enablement, sourcing process, and then vendor management. Vendor management is a very big piece. We have the relationship, there's a risk component to that, and then your performance. So we focus on vendors that can sign a contract pretty quickly, as is. There's not a lot of red lines, and you do have, legal resources to be able to sign that quickly, not a lot of back and forth. And then depending on what product or service that is involved, we do have to take into consideration some other things. So like human resources, we have to do background checks, fingerprinting, IT, where's the service where you need access to our system and our data. That becomes a very, very important thing to us because there are a lot of security measures around that. Obviously with data, it's the Federal Reserve. There's a lot of security measures that we take to make sure that that data stays confidential if need be and protected. The physical security is any liability, identification, protections, precautionary things. We are a bank to the banks. So certain departments have very specific needs. Bank examiners, audit, risk. There's a lot of different components that are a lot more, they have a lot more guidelines or safety and security measures. Supplier enablement, sourcing and process. How are you going to get your invoices? How are payments going to be made? Getting registered within the system. And you will hear me say a few times, getting acclimated with Ariba, those systems, there's a lot of YouTube videos you get online. You can go figure out how to get very comfortable with Ariba. That is one thing that our vendors do struggle with because they don't take the time to really get to know that system. And I will tell you from experience myself is once you really start to get into that system and learn it, it makes your life a whole lot easier and it makes things smoother and the process better. And then the last thing, vendor management. So it depends on the vendor, but it's important to manage our vendors based on those three components. So the relationship, the risk, and the performance. Buying pencils is very different than setting up an IT or an IS system where for bank payments. So all of this is reviewed, all of this is important, and then we review performance. If there's an issue, it's something we will touch base and address. But if there's not, we do have performance reviews, so we can make sure that you as a vendor are performing to our standards, but also we let you know how that's going. And it's not at the end of the year, if there's, like I said, if there's an opportunity for improvement, then we will have that as necessary. We won't wait till the end of the year and be like, hey, and surprise it on you.
Yeah, and
I
just to
apologize.
add,
Oh, go ahead.
no, I was just going to add to that. I mean, it's really important for us to have those relationships with the vendor.
Right.
And we know, especially as a small business, it takes a lot of effort to respond to the RFP, get the contract executed. Now you're in the door, and it's a lot of work on our end too. So we want it to be a successful relationship. So, and and if it's your first time working at the Fed, or or any organization for that matter, it's just understanding like what our expectations are. So we'll coach you along with the stakeholder and who you'd be working with, just to ensure you're meeting those needs with the bank. Just so that we're setting you up for success, because if you're successful, we're successful. And so that's really the point of that vendor management relationship.
Yeah, and I will echo Sheila, because I think one of the biggest things with our group is we really value those partnerships, those relationships that we have with our vendors. And it's not just in Sheila and I's group, it's within the bank. I work for the real estate services group, and they very much are aligned with that. They want to develop, they want you to do well. So we will have conversations to make sure that the expectation is known, because we want to have good partners on our side. So we know we can call up, Lisa Turner, and hey, she's going to do this for us. We know that she is a excellent vendor and we can rely on her. So that is a very big thing within the bank. Okay, so bank supplier contractual obligations. So these are a couple things that you as a vendor need to be doing in working with the bank. So read the contract. I know this is very, very basic, but it is amazing how many people do not read the contract. And then they're surprised or they think something else is in the contract. And then when we go back to read the contract, it is there. They just never read that. So that is a huge importance. Number one, read the contract. Understand the bank's terms and conditions. So understand how long the obligation is. Most of our agreements are 1 to 3 years. Most of them are 3 years, but there's a couple that are 1-year terms. Know your payment terms. Know when you're going to get paid. How many days is it going to be? How is it going to be paid? Understand all of that upfront. If you have an IT, I'll get to that in a minute. If there's any confidentiality, so if you're working on a project and it is confidential, know your NDA, know what is a part of that NDA and what is able to be shared versus not. Some of the projects that we have you are involved in bank information that is very confidential and is, it's not something you can put out on Facebook. Hey, we're we're working at the bank. Hey, this is where we're at. So understand what that confidentiality is, the NDA, and then obviously if you are in the data IT IS spectrum, there's a very different set of guidelines for that, just due to the nature of the information that you will be working with. There's privacy around that, handling bank confidential information or sensitive information. If you're around the IT network, all of those are very, very sensitive information and have to be followed. And it will be stated within the contract what is expected. And also use of subcontractors, fourth parties, just knowing all that is part of that classification. So if you're in the data IT IS world. Advertising and publicity. There's a lot of times that we do not advertise. We do not have that. There's some companies that put up on LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever their social media platform is. That's not something that we do. If there is something that is in question, please ask. Ask the question because you'd rather ask first than put something out there and then have to remove it because you didn't read part of the contract of you're not allowed to put that stuff out there. Also insurance, have insurance. There's liability insurance, there's workers' comp, there's all kinds of different insurance that needs to be obtained to be able to work with the bank. And then indemnification, ownership of use or work product, equal opportunity, obligations, notice and taxes. So if you I will say real quick on the notice, if there is a termination notice, is there something that we need to know or you need to know for termination or timing of things? So what does that clause look like? Some people have, 30 days. Some people have 60 days, 90 days. What is that for us? Know that in your contract. And then also taxes. We are a tax-free entity, so we don't pay taxes on the goods or services that we are obtaining. And then thirdly, seek external legal representation as needed. You may need it, you may not. We have a legal department, but we don't offer that legal service. So if that's something that you have or need, that will be something that would be required you to do outside of the bank. All right. I will pause here for just a minute. I feel like I'm running a marathon, so I apologize. Trying to go slow. Does anybody have any questions really quickly? All right. Thanks for the opportunity to learn. Do you currently use an MSP for your contingent workforce program? Go ahead, Sheila.
Okay. We do not actually. We contract directly with companies within within our 4th district, and the 4th district is Ohio, Western PA, Northern Kentucky, and part of West Virginia. So we contract directly with companies, and the way that and then as the need arises, we'll share like the job description and identify candidates that route. So we don't use an MSP. I would say many of the other districts across the Federal Reserve System do use an MSP. Cleveland is one of the districts that does not use an MSP.
Thanks, Sheila. All right, so the human resources, people, and culture. If you're providing a resource or a person to the bank, they will be required to do a background check. If they're coming on site, they will have to do fingerprinting. We do tend to get audited by the Department of Labor, so we will be obligated to report who and how long they've been working for us. And then if they are if we utilize them, they will be required to adhere to any HR bank policies. Onboarding, offboarding process, they will be provided bank equipment, and they will need to follow the IT policy as well for that. And then also they will be required to let us know if they've been employed with the Federal Reserve System. So not necessarily with Cleveland Bank, but if they had been employed anywhere throughout the system, they will be required to share that with us. So ask yourself as a supplier. So for IT and for information security and technology, will you be handling or have access to bank system data? Will the data that you will be handling happen outside of the US? Will you need access to the system bank network, or will any of your subcontractors or fourth parties need that access as well? So if yes, then the due diligence is needed to be completed. And like I said, we take our information security and our IT very, very seriously just because of the nature of the information that we're handling. That is something that I had been at a couple other companies where we had an IT department, had information security, and it was a very different system coming into the bank just because of the nature of the information. So it's not just about doing business with financial management and procurement, but we have to make sure that we get our risk, our security, and our other partners that may need to be involved to make this successful for both you and us. All right, so physical security. So understanding our processes with law enforcement unit and real estate services group. So our law enforcement unit are actually policemen. A lot of people don't know that. They're not just specifically for our bank, they are actually police officers. And our real estate services group, they are the people that we they're my business line, but they have their hand in a lot of different things. So if you're coming on site, you need access to our facilities, you have to go through both of these people to have that ability. And like I said, if you're coming on site, you will have to have a background check done, or whoever is coming on site in place as from your business, they will have to have background checks, fingerprinting, and then they will get a security badge so everybody knows, okay, that person doesn't look familiar. Who are they? They have a badge, they're a visitor, they're a guest, whatever that their need may be that day. But that is something that we follow pretty religiously as a protocol for a bank. All right, so business specific, understanding the bank and the Federal Reserve System. So if you go to clevelandfed.org, you can get lost in a whole big rabbit hole, which I suggest you do because it's very, very interesting. But you will understand, and until I will be 100% transparent and honest, before working here, I did not know everything about the bank or the Federal Reserve System. So it is pretty amazing how everything works and how everything is integrated. So sometimes we have business line specific needs that align with our strategies, our goals, and our objectives for that year. We are coming up on 2025. We have different goals for 2025 than we did in 2024. So our needs and our objectives have changed. Maybe not even a ton, but they will change from year to year. So what our need was in 2020 is going to be very different than our need that was in 2018. So you can see how those things it's very fluid. There may be different programs that we're running. There may be different projects that we're doing. We're constantly doing something. So there's always a need for a good or a service. There's also, the business line operating model. So the business line for Real Estate Services Group, their business line operating model may be different. They're all under the same, basically the Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland strategies, but their operating model is going to be very different. IT is going to be very different than risk or than Real Estate Services Group. And then also whatever has an impact to the business continuity. And business continuity is something that we didn't have the company I came from years ago, but it's pretty impressive. So what do we need to keep the business going? So if God forbid, if there has another pandemic or something else, what do we need to keep the business going? So that's where, some of you may be becoming involved and we may partner with you for that. But that's just one thing to think about. All right, so the sourcing
Laura,
process.
I'm sorry,
Oh,
Laura,
yeah,
I
go
do
ahead.
see a question in the chat if you want to address
Thank
that
you.
before you go forward. Sure.
Thank you. Anytime you're coming outside. So our fiscal year starts January 1st. So it is, I say normal. I came from a world where it was like, okay, we start February 1st, and that always threw everybody for a loop. So in the bank, it's January 1st. Good question. All right, so let's move on to sourcing process and supplier enablement. So we adhere to the system and district acquisition policy. So we try to, this is an opportunity for diverse suppliers. Depending on the spend level, and if we have an RFX sourcing event. So this also could mean if we have an RFP or an RFQ event. That's an opportunity for you to get involved with the bank. So we use the bank's procure to pay application. So we leverage Ariba SAP, and this is again, no Ariba. If you haven't used that, I would familiarize yourself with that and get comfortable with that application process, because there's a lot more companies that are using that. They use it as a sourcing event. They use it procure to pay. They use it for tracking. There's a lot of different applications that they can use it for. So the supplier enablement process. So why participate in the bank's supplier enablement process? So there's lower costs, so it reduces costs going through the electronic process of invoices. It streamlines the purchasing experience. And it provides a process that is efficient. It eliminates paper invoices and processing time. It reduces time on tracking purchase orders. You get paid faster. And then the data visibility and integrity. So it increases visibility of supplier orders and payments. And on our side of things, we can track things different. We can have different reporting structures where we see, the orders and payments of one specific supplier. We can see how that is all falling, at the end of the year and during the year too. And joining the Ariba network does make it easier to do some of these processes. And there's been some time where we've had some small vendors, they don't have a ton of time to be able to get themselves familiarized with Ariba. But taking 15, 20 minutes to really start to understand, 15, 20 minutes a day, we've had vendors, it makes a huge difference. We're just learning the systems, getting registered within the system. We worked with a vendor I would say a year or so ago, getting them in the system. And it's a challenge, but we do have resources to be able to help you with that, getting familiar with Ariba. And as Sheila's put in the chat, our policy does require us to include diverse suppliers in our procurement process. Thank you for calling that out, Sheila. Okay, so how do I start? Here's some tips for you. Register and become part of the Ariba supplier network. So set up an account with the service.ariba.com and then start to get familiarized with that. Take 15 minutes. We have 15 minutes. We have 15 minutes to scroll. We have 15 minutes to learn. Connect with other opportunities outside the bank. There's a great network out there that vendors can learn to utilize, bounce questions off each other. It's very important. And also remember your account information. I'm going through this with my son. He is 18 years old and I'm like, did you write that down? No. Well, what was it? I don't know. So make sure that you write your information down. So write your, get that information, put it in one of the apps that secure passwords, put all that information in there for you. You will thank yourself later to do that. Look out for external requests from SAP Ariba. So especially when transacting with the banking system, there may be external requests that you receive. So keep an eye on that. And then be ready with proper documentation. So before you start to get knee deep in that, make sure you have an ACH, your bank account information. All of those things are going to be needed. There's a W-9 entity classification that you'll need. Secretary of the State registration, have that up to date. And then any tax exemption certificate, sorry, I said that incorrectly. We can provide those tax exempt forms for you because we do not pay tax on anything. If they're needed, please reach out to us. We can provide that for you. And then following these processes will help with the orders and get you paid. And that's everybody's ultimate goal. All right, so banks vendor management system. This is something that's near and dear to our heart. This is something we've been working on for quite a long time. So part of this, you are going to need to be an active vendor within the bank. So if you have the opportunity to work with us, that it's not a, hey, let's get into the system and then we're done. Know your point of contacts. So does the bank know who to contact for you? Are you a vendor that has 3 employees? Do we know all 3 of them? Do we know that we can reach out to them? So make sure that the bank knows who to work with and then who you need to work with. So if you have a question on, a payment, who is your point of contact? Is your business line, do they have 3 people that you can contact? Know that information. That will help you along in the long run. And then understand the contract management piece. Like I said, understand your contract, understand invoicing, understand payments, and have questions. There's a lot of times you will think of things like just going through this. You can go through this. I can tell this all to you and Sheila can answer any questions and put information out there, but you may not think of something until later. So knowing those contacts, that's where you say, hey, I was just thinking of this. What's the process for this? And send it over to your contact. And then they'll get that back for you. But all of that is very important in the vendor management relationship piece. And really knowing those contacts, you're building the relationship. So make sure that, that's something that and then know the escalation plan. So know if you're not getting an answer from, Joe Smith that's in accounting, who do you go to? Do you go to your business line? Do you go to this? But then on the same token, understand what the escalation plan is on the reverse. So if you're providing a service to the bank, if we're not getting, something in a timely fashion, make sure you communicate that. If not, then things will be escalated, to make sure that that service gets provided or in the correct way. I will say communication is a huge piece of working with the bank. We've had vendors who communicate on a regular basis. They communicate on a weekly basis, a daily basis. is. Set that up with your business line first. What is the expectation? Do you want me to provide, an update of this, or if something's delayed, set that up, because that will eliminate and take out any frustration or guesswork that, we may not know or need with that service, but you can never over communicate. I can't stress that enough. And then recurring relationship and performance meetings. So I had alluded to this a little bit in the beginning. We will have performance meetings. There's not really a set cadence, but having those conversations and building that relationship with your point of contact in your business line, you'll understand and develop that relationship, but also understand what the performance cadence will be. So if every 3 months you're going to have a performance review, which I don't mind hearing things about my performance, because I only will take that information and get better. So I think that is crucial to the success of working with the bank, is understanding what the expectation is, and then how often we will have those meetings with you, to make sure that you are meeting the level of expectation. Also, kind of measuring a supplier's performance. So what is the service level agreement that was worked out between you and the business line? What is the contractual obligations? Well, I was supposed to provide A and B, but I forgot C, so those will be worked out within the contract that you negotiate. And then what are key milestones and payments? So there could be key milestones for your project or your program that you provide, and then there could be milestones for payments. After 50% is done, this is what you'll get in terms of payment. So there's just different key milestones, but all of that is information that would be definitely beneficial to know, and that will be reviewed in the performance. But then also credits and penalties. So there may be a credit, there may be a penalty if the work isn't completed, or if the good isn't at the bank when it is expected. And then there's an ongoing monitoring of the life cycle. So if there's a new risk that comes up, if there's something that we don't necessarily, you don't plan for, but it happens, how do we mitigate the risk? That is a big thing for the bank, is mitigating any huge risks. We do take some risks, but what has changed? What do we need to change? And then monitoring the relationship. Do we see anything that needs to change? Sometimes, maybe we need to change a personality or a personnel. But it's all an ongoing process. It's not a one and done, because I think we want, as much as we want a vendor to be successful for the bank, we want you to be successful as well. And like Sheila and I had both said, relationship building is very important to the bank. All right, so more due diligence for vendor risk management. So there'll be additional assessments if you provide a service or a good for the information technology security area. A lot of it depends on the complexity of the deal or the program or the project. So these could be very long-term projects. It could be huge dollar projects, but depending on that, you're not going to have the same assessment if you're buying 1,000 pencils versus if you're buying a multi-million-dollar IT program. So just know the difference between that. And obviously business continuity, resilience, knowing the inherent risks and the controls, and then fraud, anti-money laundering. There's a lot of different assessments that will be part of different departments and the products and services that they require. So fourth party subcontractors, anything offshore, there'll be additional assessments, different measures of security, any supplier processes and procedures. There'll be the SOX reporting, the SSAE, and then any financial performance or spend. Sheila, is there anything? I'm sorry. Can you go back, Dr. K? Is there anything else that I didn't cover on this that we need to?
No, I think, no, you did a good job covering it all. And just that we would work with you on understanding what information we would need as we're either onboarding you as a vendor or like Laura said, through the life cycle of working with the bank. And a lot of these, I would say most vendors that we work with, I would say most of them, there's not a lot of extra documentation that you need to provide. So I don't want to overwhelm you, but there is, depending on the level, the level of the good or service that you're providing, there are some additional steps that we need to go through to ensure that we're not exposing the bank to additional risks, and whatever risks we are exposing the bank to, that we're comfortable with.
Thanks, Sheila. All right, that is the end of my presentation. Is there any questions that you have now or on anything that I covered?
Hi, it's Lisa. I do have a question. Hello, about your priorities for FY25 as it relates to human resources and IT.
So Sheila, would you be able to answer that? Because I'm not privy to that.
Yeah, I would say that on the HR side, I think that's something that we could get back with you on. I know that they're I would say revisiting their strategy at this time. So I think that's information that we could share. As far as IT, I think the thing that makes it unique with IT is that we do have a national IT and then a local IT. And so I think if you could share some information about your company, we could just see I'm sorry, my dog is on my lap, and where we can share that information and see where your businesses could align to some of those strategies. But I will say that typically from like an HR perspective, we are typically like maybe hiring training and development consultants, or even consultants on to improving like some of our soft skills, or maybe aligning to like what are the bank values and providing more training and development in those areas.
Okay.
IT, I would say the majority of the time it's with like contingent staffing. I would say like the technology piece is not something that we buy locally, but it's more of like the contingent staffing and support or developers that we're sourcing here locally.
Okay. I can definitely share my capability statement when you provide the contact information. So thank you for that.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome.
Thanks, Sheila.
Any additional questions? While you all are thinking, I'm going to share my screen again. For if you are not watching this from your phone, if you can pull out your phone and just take a quick moment to scan this QR code and fill out this brief survey for us. And then, as was previously mentioned, you all will receive the recording from today's call, as well as a copy of the PowerPoint presentation and the link that Laura talked about. So all of that will go out to you. You should probably have that by Friday at the very latest, but all of their contact information and everything will be in there. And then I'll move on to the next slide. We always like to share about some of our upcoming events. We are rounding out the end of the year, so there's not a whole lot left, but if you know anybody who is interested in becoming a certified WBE, we do have 2 how to get certified, we have the WBE onboarding workshops for newly certified WBEs. We do have a becoming a certified WBE workshop, which is on December 5th for people who may be interested. And then December 19th is going to be our Cheers to 2024 ORV end of the year party. That is going to be at our office in Mason. More information will be going out probably by the end of the week with that, but you can go ahead and pencil that in on your calendar. It will be probably 6 to 8, 6 to 9, sometime in the evening. But more information will be coming out about that as well. So we would love to see all of you there. Does anybody else have any final questions?
One more question.
Yes.
Was there, I think you mentioned there was a particular, maybe an invite to a purchasing event, or did I miss that?
I think you're talking, Laura, you were talking about inviting to your purchasing events, right?
Yes. Yeah. So when we have them, if we have your information and it fits, everything that we're looking for, we'll invite you to that.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Perfect. Any other questions? All right. If not, enjoy the rest of your day, ladies, and we will see you all next time. Bye-bye.
You, Laura,
Thank you.
Sheila, and Dr.
Bye,
King.
thank you.
Thanks, Laura. Thanks, Sheila.
Bye.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Elsie.